Hello everyone, welcome back to the Audiobook Cook, a cozy corner of Just Readin where we feed the imagination and whip up something delicious while diving into stories that will stir our souls. I'm Dami and today we're making some soft and sweet coconut cookies. They're perfect for snacking while we get swept away by Storm, Dawn of a Goddess by Tiffany D. Jackson. Now the ingredients for these cookies are simple, but they packed a really flavorful punch. All you need are coconut flakes, brown sugar, butter, and some vanilla and eggs. And then you can whip up a quick treat for you and your family. So while I go ahead and prepare our treats, let's talk about Storm, Dawn of a Goddess. Just like the cookies, the story starts off really simple. Storm is a girl with her family trying to figure out who she is, why she feels different, why she looks different. And then tragedy strikes. She ends up on the streets, an orphan in Cairo, trying to discover who she is and yet trying to fit in. She has a chance encounter with Professor Xavier and she doesn't know it yet, but later down that's going to really impact her life. But it goes on with her being on the run from someone who is trying to basically steal her powers. And there's a little bit of a love story which I think you guys will absolutely adore. She meets T'Challa, yes, and I'm not giving out any spoilers other than that, but it was very sweet and it really had put icing on the cake for me as I was reading the story because Wakanda, what else is there to say? This book was wrapped up in secrets and gods and magic and mystery and of course mutants because it's an origin story of Storm from the X-Men. There was one line that really just made it give me chills almost where she meets a mentor and she talks about thinking that the storm or the weather is an enemy to her. And the woman basically tells her, this is your heritage. This is the gift of your people, your family, your mother. How dare you see it as a curse instead of as a blessing? And I thought that was just so poignant. And the journey that Storm goes on, it's wrapped up in her embracing who she is. As long as she tried to hide it, she couldn't become her true self. But then when she finally discovered, like, who am I? What am I? How does this, how am I different? And how can I take my power back? And then she really starts to shine. Storm isn't perfect. She's angry through a lot of it. She's unsure. But she learns about her power. She learns about the truth of who she is, and she accepts the pain of her past and is able to move on from it, not forget it, but to heal from it. And it's only then that she really steps into her true power and then becomes ready to walk in her own right. So here I'm adding some vanilla to our dough, and then we're going to mix it around again until it's fully incorporated so that we can scoop it with an ice cream scoop and make the cookie rounds. It doesn't spread very much, and so you are not going to have a lot of sticking to your pan. I recommend lining it with parchment paper. That way you don't have to worry about it sticking, and you don't have to use the non-stick spray. But if you have no parchment paper, non-stick spray works just as well. Elements of the story that really stood out to me, one of the first ones is the found family element. After becoming an orphan, Aurora, who we will eventually know as Storm, beautiful name by the way, joins a gang of children on the street. They pickpocket on the streets of Cairo, and it's their way of basically providing for themselves because they have no home, no family, they take care of each other, they love each other, they celebrate and they challenge each other. She loves them, but she always felt like the outsider and the only girl in a gang of boys that she calls her brothers, and the foreigner in the group. I'm adding coconut flakes here, and you can always fold the coconut flakes in. I folded in everything at the very end. I just used the mixer for most of the incorporation of the ingredients. So back to the story. She feels like an outsider. She's the only girl in a gang of boys. She's a foreigner. She's not native to the country. She looks different. She sounds different. She does hide her most identifiable characteristic, which of course is that lovely hair and her eyes when her powers come in. It doesn't happen right away, of course. She's still on her journey. And so she goes ahead and she hides it for as long as she can, until finally she can't hide it anymore. And then she has to go on her journey of self-discovery because she hears the call to come home. The land is calling to her, ancestors are calling to her, and so she has to go off and she has to follow and heed that call, because it becomes dangerous after a while to stay there. She's being hunted. And again, I'm trying not to give too many spoilers away so that it can be just as wonderful and fresh for you when you go ahead and read the story on your own. The recipe called for cream of tartar or tartar, but I did not have that on hand. So a really good substitute is lime juice or lemon juice. It gives you that nice flavor, and it does the same job that the cream of tartar does. I want to try it with the cream of tartar. How do you say that word? Is T-A-R-T-A-R? Is it tartar or tartar? I want to say tartar, but that sounds a bit awkward coming out of my mouth. But anyway, go ahead and use the lemon juice and then just incorporate everything. Scrape the edges, of course, and then you're going to scoop it. And there's the parchment paper lined tray. So I usually leave like maybe 2 or 3 inches of room between each cookie round, just because if it does have a little bit of spreading, they don't stick together. The parchment paper is really good for it not sticking to the pan and having it get off the pan much easier. So after you scoop everything in, your oven should have been preheating for a few minutes at 350, and the bake is pretty quick. I usually check the oven and to make sure that it doesn't get too dark, but I don't mind a crunchy cookie. In fact, I prefer it on the crunchier side to the softer side. It just depends on my mood. So these cookies, they can be nice and soft. It just depends on your bake time. A good rule of thumb for me is 20 to 25 minutes. My oven, though, does run a little hot, hotter than the knobbed temperatures will say. So I use an oven thermometer to get my bake really perfect. My oven runs, if I set it for 350, when I check it, sometimes it's at 400. So my oven runs about 25 to 50 degrees hotter than the norm, which is very interesting. So I check it with my thermometer, and if it calls for it to be at 350, I will set my knobs at 300, just about. It's approximate. It just depends on what the temperature in the oven says when I read my thermometer. So if you don't have a thermometer, just go with your gut, but check your cookies so they don't stay in too long and get too burnt and too crunchy. So last thing before we wrap up today's episode, the X-Men choose their names based on their characteristics. At the very end, Storm names herself. Her mentor, some of the words her mentor says to her comes back to her, and it's no one can change a storm's path. Only the storm can do that for itself. A storm like you can never be controlled because the storm has a destiny. And on that note, I hope you enjoy your sweet reads and your even sweeter bites. And as always, keep on reading. Bye now. And I think that was a really good note to end it on. So enjoy your sweet reads and your even sweeter bites. And as always, just keep on reading.